All right. Hello, everyone. Episode 2 of Hoops with Noel. We tried to do episode 2 last week. Had some connection issues on both of our ends, so that really didn't turn out too well, to be quite frank with you. But this episode, we have an awesome topic and something we're hoping to get into more, and it's like the ranking side of things in the NBA. So right now we're starting off with top 5 duos of people under 25. So they could be 24 years old and 364 days, that count, but a day older doesn't count. But yeah, we're hoping to do more ranking vids because it's honestly one of the more fun things to talk about and like comparing our lists and whatnot. So we can get started. Nolan, what is your honorable mention? So this would be a duo that didn't quite make the list. You want to see more from them, and maybe they're just not quite there skill level wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my honorable mention before jumping in my list is R.J. Barrett and Mitch Robinson on the Knicks. This duo intrigues me a ton, and it's going to be super interesting to watch this year because the Knicks are coached by Tom Thibodeau, who has kind of playing the younger players with increased minutes. So both these guys are going to see more minutes than last year on the Knicks. I think when looking at this duo, I think with the draft class he was in, a lot of guys and people who are fans of the league put a lot more focus on Ja and Zion over RJ, which is rightfully so. I'd say at this point, I think they have proved themselves better. But RJ Barrett still has a lot to prove. He has a very good physical size, plays the game well. He has almost all of the features that you want of a guy in his spot who can make a difference in the game. He's also lefty, which is also a little bit interesting.
Yeah.
Little feature. And then with Mitch Robinson, one guy that I just think not many people at all are talking about. Even in the draft, he slipped down in the second round. He went pretty late. And he's one of the most elite shot blockers in the entire league, I would say. With him, I think it just comes down to having more consistency with the game. He doesn't have as much of a feel as a lot of guards and forwards do on the league. So kind of just getting his IQ up and playing with a little bit more smoothness in the game. But I think two things to watch is that with Mitch Robinson and then RJ Barrett's development of his shot. Because I think already he's proven he can get to the hoop on most defenders and can also defend people on the other end. So I'm very intrigued by this duo, and they just missed my top 5.
Yeah, no. And further on that, RJ Barrett went 3, so he still has a ton of potential, really young. And I'm just excited, maybe the Knicks basketball will actually be relevant. The Mecca gets pretty hyped up when there's crowds. And I mean, I just remember thinking of Melo against when they made it to the playoffs. I know I don't even know if they won one of the series, but
yeah, I don't think they did.
They were exciting to watch. It was the Mecca.
When we talk about the Mecca, let's bring up Linsanity. Can we remember how hyped that was? Come on.
Yeah. I mean, also shout out Stephen A. Smith. He's also a huge Knicks fan. I want to see the man happy. He's been deprived of good basketball for years. But not to get too far sidetracked, my honorable mention is going to be LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges. So this is mainly because of LaMelo Ball and just how just exciting he's been as a rookie. He's the youngest player ever to record a triple-double. And he's been everything as advertised. In the preseason, he kind of struggled. People were clowning on him for this and that. But he's really playing with a lot of confidence. His shot has, as ugly as it looks, it goes in. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And Miles Bridges, freak athlete, a little undersized. He's 6'6" as a forward, so you'd wish he'd be taller. But, crazy athletic. He's been shooting better this year. It's a smaller sample size, but still, something to note. Maybe he's gotten his shot figured out. Too early to tell, but if you do watch his high school highlights, this man literally looks like the next coming of LeBron. And he was a beast at Michigan State. He's only 22. Melo's 19. I'm excited for their future. It's kind of weird to say. I couldn't imagine a year ago me saying I'm excited to watch Hornets games. That is just something that has not been said in a while. But they're pretty solid and they're on the come up. I'm excited to see what they can do. Maybe they get another young player next to LaMelo, but Yeah, so that's my honorable mention. Nolan, let's get into the top 5 now. What is your number 5 duo of people that are under 25? Both players have to be under 25.
Mhm. Yeah. So one thing though, before I do my number 5, is I want to say on your duo, on your honorable mention, I think one thing that they do well as a duo is, to those who haven't watched the Hornets, there have been a lot of highlights, and Melo throws the oop so nice to Melo.
Yeah.
It's one of the best highlights so far in the league this year. But without further ado, my number 5 on my list, under 25 duos, is Mo Bamba and Jonathan Isaac. And I think a lot of people do not put enough attention or pay enough attention to these players. I think they're very under the radar. However, I will say they have both been injured, so that's one factor.
Yeah.
But Mo Bamba is 22 years old. Jonathan Isaac's 23 years old. Jonathan Isaac's coming in at 6'11", Mo Bamba 7 foot. And these guys, the main appeal to me as a fan of the league is I'm someone who especially puts a lot of emphasis on the defensive side of the ball. And both these guys can guard nearly anyone. Jonathan Isaac is the player he reminds me of the most in the defensive end is Giannis. And I'm not saying he's as athletic or as big and as good of a defender as Giannis, but he really can defend anyone. And he still has a good shot. It's not like neither of these guys have jump shots that they can run an offense through like a lot of other stars in the league. Both these guys can hit shots that are open if they're given to them. So they space the floor well, and I just love what these guys do on the defensive end. And to mention about the man, Mo Bamba, we know he has a song, all right? We know he has a song. But not many people know too much about him. This guy, if you didn't know this, has the second longest wingspan in NBA history besides Manute Bol, who was the tallest player ever. His wingspan is 7'10". So he can quite literally defend anyone. And if you watch his highlights too, his shot form, it looks good. With a guy that tall, a lot of guys that tall, when I think guys that tall, I think of a Rudy Gobert, who's a good guy inside and he can play defense. But Rudy Gobert's shot is just ugly. It's, for lack of a better word, it is ugly. And Mo Bamba has a nice looking form shot. And I think both these guys, I am curious how they play out in Orlando, if maybe one gets traded with the other, and injuries. But if both these guys are healthy and they're on the court together, they are a duo that I think deserves to be on this list.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too, is they do have Vucevic at center, and he's been pretty lights out. He was really good in the bubble, and they're still really young, and I think their main thing is injuries. If they can stay healthy and actually get like synergy and play together and chemistry and whatnot, they'll actually be able to like realize more of the potential. But that's pretty much their only big limiting factor. Sky's the limit for both of them. So my number 5 is going to be the Atlanta Hawks duo, Trae Young and John Collins. So Trae Young coming in was pretty polarizing. Some people thought he'd be Steph Curry. Some people thought he would just fall off and not really be much. And he's trending more towards Steph Curry. Not to say he's nearly as good. He's not. But he's been good. He's been really good. Mainly on the offensive end, shooting, pretty good passer too. And for John Collins, I mean, he's just an athletic freak. I mean, you've seen him in the post, pretty decent touch, can dunk not over anyone, but he can dunk pretty well. The main issue with these two is defense. I think that's pretty well documented. John Collins is an all right defender. I'd say he still has a lot of room for improvement, right? But Trae Young is just a downright not really a good defender, and it's kind of an issue with him. And the fact that he's going to have to be like Curry, where they sort of hide him on the defensive end and just hope that the offensive prowess that he has can make up for that lack of defense. But they do have the wings, and they're a young team. I'm thinking they'll make the playoffs. They're pretty exciting. They have a bright future. What are your thoughts, Noel?
Yeah, I would say I agree with the take. I think this is a special duo. I would honestly say on the offensive end that this duo is comparable to anyone that we'll have on the list. I think one of the hardest duos to guard on offense, and I think speaking on their offense, if they run the pick and roll, they are almost unguardable, especially if Trae's hitting the shots. John Collins can go up. He's a freak athlete and go for the oop. They're a special duo, but it comes down to, I think, what you touched on is how well the duo can they be on defense. And I think that's going to be the Achilles heel of this Hawks team all season. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play on both sides of the ball.
And I know John Collins, at least he's been, I think he's a free agent either this offseason or the next. And there's been a lot of talk of if he'll leave and where he'll go. I know one destination I keep seeing is Dallas, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, we don't really know about the future there. But not to get too sidetracked. What is your number 4, Nolan?
So my number 4 is Jaylen Brown at 24 years old and Jason Tatum at 22 years old. And here's what I'll say: I have rationale for them being a little bit low. Most people would probably have them higher, and I will say this is probably right now in the game the most talented duo. But when I look at them as a duo, the thing that is why they're so low and what my worry with them is that they remind me of almost the same player. So in that regard, I'm very worried at like how they can share the ball. And they've done a decent job, and I think the Celtics will be a team, they're a contender this year. They were last year. And they'll make deep runs in the playoffs. But I just worry that you can't really run a two-man game with them. You can't like they don't run one of them setting a pick for the other. It's a lot of ISO ball.
Yeah.
So this duo in itself is probably the most talented out of any of the duos we're going to talk about in terms of each player's talent. But as a duo together on the same team, I think they just run into problems because they're so similar. That's my rationale.
No, it's definitely an interesting point, and I think what I would compare them to is PG, Paul George, and Kawhi, and we saw what their offense was like without really a good facilitating point guard, and they would run a lot of ISO ball, and it's good when they're both making shots, but it can, I don't know, they fall. I'm just comparing it to the Clippers situation. Obviously, it's not the exact same, but they did have struggles when their point guard couldn't get involved, and the Celtics might have the same stuff too if Kemba can't keep performing at what people think he'll be. But they're an interesting duo, and I agree with you. They're probably the most talented. I have them high on my list, so I'm definitely a big fan. I can get into number 4 unless you have any other thoughts on them.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with what your takes on that duo, and what you got number 4? What you got?
So number 4 is a duo that should be getting more hype around the league. No one really talks about them, but it's Domantas Sabonis, and Miles Turner on the Pacers. So I'm gonna just bring this up. So last year we know Sabonis made the All-Star team. And a lot of people are like, oh, this wasn't deserved. Like, he's really not all that good. It's only because he's in the East. And that there may be some truth to some of those statements. But this year, he has been feasting. He has a nice mid-range game, incredible passer, similar to his dad, pretty decent on the glass. And Miles Turner, he pretty good shooter, not the best mid-range, not a really good, dominant post player. Like, he can finish and catch off the pick and roll, right? But his defense has been insane. He's had multiple games with over 8 blocks. That's pretty unheard of.
Ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
And it's not just he tips it, he's glassing people, right? Like he's pinning it on the backboard. He's an athletic freak. He's definitely top 3, top 5 for defense player of the year as it stands right now, in my mind. And I know they're on the Pacers, so I think that's the main reason they're really not getting hype. Like if they were in a bigger market like New York or LA or Boston or something like that, people would be talking about them in the media, but they haven't been. And one game to point out is Sabonis is he dropped a 28 and 22 rebound game, which is, that's massive. And so we'll probably see the Pacers in the playoffs again. They make it pretty much every year. But they're up and coming. They're both 24, so they're on the older end. But, yeah, I like them a lot, and I'm excited to see what they can do.
Yeah, what I would say on that duo, too, is I just love how well they complement each other.
Yeah.
Because I think they both are guys who can go up and get rebounds in any given possession. But with Turner, you got him as a defensive end on the defensive end, who right now is, I think, leading in blocks per game so far on this season, and is one of the most elite shot blockers in the game. And then you got Sabonis, who on the other end can post up guys, get buckets at will, and then find open guys. And then Miles Turner, again, he isn't the best spot. Like he can't shoot off the dribble. He can't. He's got room to improve posting up. But if you give him the open 3 or you give him the open mid range, he'll knock it down and he'll make it. So I think they complement each other so well. And I do agree that if this duo was on another team in a bigger market, they would be a lot more.
Yeah. All right, we can move on, Noel. What do you got at number 3? The bronze medal.
The bronze medal, yes. The bronze medal of my list is going to the boys out in Phoenix, Devin Booker at 24 years old and DeAndre Ayton at 22 years old. This duo has both been putting up big numbers even before guys like Chris Paul came to town and made them into what they are right now. And I think this duo has room to grow too. I think I love how well both players play the game, and I love this duo in the fact too that they can run the pick and roll and be a offensive standpoint just by themselves, just those two in the two-man game. I really think is important for any duo. Devin Booker has been just increasing and getting better every year, and it seems like his jump shot just gets more and more better. And then especially it's going to help too with having Chris Paul there. And then with Ayton too, he just is such an athletic freak that he just matches up with anyone. He's a good shooter too. He has a nice mid-range game. And then I would say the one thing that I would like to see Ayton start to get better at, where there's some room to improve, because there isn't that much to critique with these guys' games. They have proven a lot in the time they've been in Phoenix, is if Ayton can knock down open threes. I saw in his stats he doesn't attempt many threes. If it's something the Suns would want him to do, but that is basically the only critique. I think he is going to be a top center in the league. And he has proven he can match up with anyone since he's been in the league. And Devin Booker just continues to impress me on offense. He really does have one of the best jump shots, I'd say, in the league. And there's a reason that Devin Booker is dropping 60-point games, 50-point games. Last season, this season, he's got the jumper. He's got the J.
Yeah, I mean, I personally didn't have this duo. It is definitely a solid duo. My thing with Ayton is when I see him in the post, he's more of like a hustle and energy type of scorer. Like, he's not going to back you down and then hit you with a post hook with his left or right hand. Like, he can do it from time to time, but I feel like he's not a guy you can center your offense around. Booker is one of those guys, though, and that's a pretty good synergy that you did bring up. My thing with Booker is his defense isn't always the best. That's another kind of negative thing. Ayton kind of helps with that, though, because he's a freak on the defensive end. Like, he's super athletic and whatnot, right? But yeah, they're definitely a good, really solid duo in the West. So if they can make the playoffs, I'm excited to see them against some of like the better teams, because Booker hasn't made the playoffs yet, and neither is Ayton.
Yeah, they definitely have doubters to prove wrong.
Yeah,
they both haven't really done anything in terms of making runs at the ship. So this is definitely a duo that I'm excited to watch this year, and I'm very excited to see how this duo performs, especially with having Chris Paul around them. But I also agree with your point. I think Devin Booker does need to improve on the defensive end. It's the one of the other critiques that I think is a fair critique at this duo.
Yep. All right. So my bronze medal, it's going out to the men in Memphis. I have Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson, number 3. So both are I think they're 20 years old, right? So they're super young. We know Ja won Rookie of the Year last year, came from Murray State. His first game in the tournament dropped a triple-double on Marquette, which I think put him on the map heavily. I mean, he's going to be a really high pick, right? But not many people knew about him. And after that, he was a well-known commodity by, even the most casual fans, right? And Jaren Jackson, so he's like 6'10 or 6'11, big man, pretty decent shooter, I want to say, and defensively, pretty locked down. So the only really thing with these guys, so Ja's been injured this year, we know, right? They just need more experience, pretty much, as they've only been in the league for a couple years. So it's kind of hard to tell how good they actually are. And I want to see them on the playoff stage. I don't know if it'll happen this year. Maybe they tank, get a top prospect, but they're both insanely athletic, and I'm excited to see how Memphis does. This is their rebuild, and their promising rebuild from the grit and grind Grizzlies with, Tony Allen, Marc Gasol, Zebo, Conley. So it's kind of a new look in Memphis, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah, no, totally. I think this duo has got the top of anything in terms of potential. They can really one of the next best duos in the entire league, not just 25, depending on how they perform within year to year. I do agree, though, that they do have some rookie tendencies to shake. They are pretty young. especially with Jaren Jackson. The only thing is sometimes he's almost a little too aggressive on the defensive end. But I just love, how athletic both these guys are, how well they shoot, the confidence they play with. I really don't have too much downsides to this duo, and I think they're young, they're both 21, but I am excited for this duo, and I think I'm hoping they've had some injury problems. I'm really hoping that stops because I am so excited to watch this duo as they progress and get older in the league.
And so your silver medal, we each only have two more. I know we have one of the same one. We have one different. What is your number 2?
So my silver is going out to the boys up in New Orleans, the Pelicans, Zion and Brandon Ingram, who Brandon Ingram is 23 and Zion is 20. This duo is basically been putting the league on notice ever since Zion got to the team. Brandon Ingram has been getting his own on the offensive end, and so is Zion. Both these guys really, if they're on shooting, they can't be guarded. Zion doesn't even have to be on shooting; he
doesn't need to.
Whoever's in his way. And I think too, when I watch the Pelicans, especially this year, I think Zion's taking a big step on defense. He's kind of getting himself in better position because he's got the athleticism to guard anyone. He's had some big blocks because of that. So I'm loving what he's doing on the defensive end. And then with this duo too, as I talk about it, when I look at that duo, I do look at what they both do individually, but I like them together. And you run like a pick and roll, for example, because that's a duo move that NBA players run. When you run a pick and roll with Brandon Ingram and Zion setting the pick, it is a tough task to shut down as a defender. You either got Brandon Ingram who can get his jump shot from wherever, it's going to be a tough one to block or go to the rim, and you got Zion cutting. There are few players who are standing in the way of Zion going to the hoop. Slamming it down. I love this duo, and I'm very excited to see how this duo plays out.
Yeah, so my number 2 is actually going to be the same as yours. I had Zion and Brandon Ingram. So I know you touched on it already, but I'll do a little more. So I think we all remember the Brandon Ingram trade to the Lakers for AD. It was a blockbuster trade. Obviously, it's paid dividends for the Lakers. You know, they won the championship. Some have discredited it because, you know, it was in the bubble and whatnot. But
in the bubble.
Yeah, you know, they still they got the championship. They couldn't have done it without AD. He played amazing, but Brandon Ingram was one of the main pieces of that. Him, Lonzo, Josh Hart, and Brandon Ingram was not performing at the level he has been when he was on the Lakers. He showed some potential, right? In the last year, he kind of started popping off near the end. He got to the Pelicans, and he's been everything as people could hope for on draft day. So, yeah, that's awesome for him because he was kind of being written off as a rookie. And for Zion, you know, he was hyped up as like one of those the next LeBron or like the next insane prospect, mainly due to his athleticism. And he's kind of, I don't know if he's been living up to like the LeBron hype because that's near impossible, right? But he's been insane in his own right. He averages over 20. And yeah, getting to the basket for him is really not hard at all. He has insane touch for a big guy. And something that I want to see him utilize more is his passing, especially in transition. I think we remember on Duke, he was definitely dropping dimes to Reddish and Barrett. And we haven't seen as much of those like sweet highlight passes. So hopefully there's that in the future. I mean, I know they have Lonzo who's throwing oops to him, so that's always fun to watch. But yeah, I'm excited for this duo. This is pretty exciting for the Pelicans too, because outside of Chris Paul and AD, they haven't really found like that all that much success in the league. But yeah, I want to see him pop off.
I think too that as he starts to become more and more of a presence in the league, they're going to start sending doubles and make sure he doesn't get his own way. So I think once that starts happening, his passing will be on display. Whereas I do think as much as you can talk about Zion in almost every facet of his game, he did have good passing at Duke. He hasn't had too much of an opportunity to show it in the league. I think that's something to pay attention to going into the future, and I think it's going to be something that elevates his game to the next level.
Sure. All right, so you're number 1 for the best duo Both people are under 25 in the NBA right now. Who is it?
So, spoiler alert, this duo has already been mentioned, but they're at the top of my list, sitting atop the throne with the gold medals. It is Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., both at 21 years old. Blake touched on it. Both these guys have been outperforming, both super young, both freakishly athletic, both can spot up from almost anywhere on the floor. And I love this duo. I think there are fair arguments that you can make that right now that this duo might not be the best in every facet, but I look at the potential of this duo, and I really do think they are going to be the best, regardless if you don't think it right now. I look at the fact that just Ja is just Ja, and he's so quick that he can really go past anyone or around anyone, and he finishes over anyone.
Yeah.
After I saw that dunk on Aaron Baines, who was just the master of getting postered last year, I was like, all right, this guy, he really will dunk on anyone.
Yeah.
No one is safe from this man, Ja Morant. He will go out there and do whatever it takes to get points and get the wins. And with Jaren Jackson Jr., a couple of the games I saw where he was just couldn't miss from three. And if you have a guy of that size who can't miss from three and gets that hot from distance sometimes, good luck guarding him. And if you have this tandem as a duo, are you kidding me? Defenses are going
to rolls
as this ball progresses. I think Ja can improve on defense. I think Jackson Jr. is a good defender, but I do think he can still improve on defense. I touched briefly when Blake brought this duo up. Sometimes he has a tendency to leave his man over in support, but I kind of, as much as it's a weakness, I do like this tendency because it shows he's aggressive and he's not going to shy away from letting another guy's man go to hoop uncontested. I just love almost everything about both these guys' games, and I am so excited to see what the future of this duo has in store.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like we mentioned, they're both really young. They hold the keys to Memphis as of now. I think the only really thing against them is they don't really have like a third guy to kind of like push them over the edge, like with a veteran presence. I mean, they have Valanciunas, they have a couple other guys, but they don't really have. Neither of these guys are stars yet, and for Memphis to climb the ranks of the top West teams, one of these guys is going to have to become a superstar. It's possible both of them do. I would say Ja's probably more likely, but they're still both awesome. And yeah, I'm with you on they probably have the most potential of any of the duos, that's a fair reason to put them at number one, right? So with my gold medal, I'm giving it to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, the guys in Boston. And the main reason is, as of right now, they're both trending towards being superstars. They both average over 20. They can score efficiently. We've seen them in big-time moments. Think about the 2018 Eastern Conference Finals. Jason Tatum was a rookie. The man dunked on LeBron in, I think it was game 6 or 7. I forget exactly, but that was crazy. But yeah, and honestly, right now it's tough to say which one's even better than the other. I mean, Jaylen Brown has probably been outplaying Tatum so far this year, and so I know your point earlier was how can they mesh? Because like they're not like a point guard center duo where one can run like a pick and roll with them, right? So they're more ISO. But I honestly think Brad Stevens can work around that, and he's a really good head coach in my eyes. Running plays and whatnot. So I think they'll be fine. And yeah, I would honestly compare them. They're probably a similar duo to like PG and Kawhi. They're not at their levels yet. They haven't accomplished as much, but they're both under 25. That's ridiculous. I'm excited to see where they go. I think they could possibly win a chip. Interesting to see like what moves they make to make that happen and get closer to there. Because right now, this year, I don't think it's their year, but you never know what happens, right?
Mm-hmm. And one thing I will say, too, is, yes, I had my personal problems with how they'd mesh. But my problem on the offensive end and the meshing, like who would take the last shot or how do you get rid of the ISO ball. But one thing I will say is they don't need any help meshing the defensive end. They are both pretty stud defenders and can guard a lot of different positions. And I think that is already proven. So I think that just the fact – the only really downside of them is that they're very certain how to really have a two-man game. But in a lot of ways, Brad Stevens is your coach. You might not even need a two-way game. So they have proven time and time again that they are big-time players and they make big-time plays. And I think, yeah, if the only really downside is how they mesh and how similar they are, but if that's the only downside, that shows that this is a legit duo. This is a very
Yeah.
legit. And I got no problem with them getting the gold medal of Blake Adams' list. I got no problem.
Yeah. So that's going to wrap up this episode of Hoops with Noel, episode 2. So we're hoping in the future we can maybe get Vish on, maybe do like a live stream on StreamYard so we can have some interaction with questions. We were able to do that the first episode. This one, we just want to just make it clean cut, just us two talking about our top 5 duos under 25. But thanks for watching. Do leave a comment on your opinions on these duos. Maybe drop some sleeper ones that maybe we've overlooked and didn't throw out. But, yep, thanks for watching. And come back next week for episode 3.